The Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra looks so freaking good, but I've been using an iPhone for the better part of a decade as my primary cellular device. What should I do? Hi, I'm Kyler, and a little while back, Samsung almost got me with their super fun and quirky Z Flip 5, but now my eyes are set on what everyone's describing now as the absolute cream of the crop in smartphones, the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. That's right, it's got size, it's got titanium, it's got cameras, and it's got freaking AI. But it's also kind of pricey, to put it mildly. It's even pricier than the iPhone 15 Pro Max too, which is a bold amount to cost. Now, that's not what my current daily driver is. I just have a disgusting, outdated, plebeian 14 Pro Max, so keep that in mind as we go along here. But before I abandon all my allegiance to my cozy Apple ecosystem, I had to play around with this thing until I knew what I was getting myself into. So listen closely, come here, and I'll tell you what I learned along the way. The very first thing about the S24 Ultra is how profoundly flat this thing is. It is the definition of candy bar style device with a virtually bezel-less design that right off the rip is obviously a decent amount larger than an iPhone. The screen is fully squared off, and as silly as it sounds, it's enough of a departure from what we're used to that it makes it look and feel a little more premium than the last few generations of iPhones. You know how Apple likes to bounce back and forth every couple years and switch between rounded and flat sides on their phones? Well, Samsung took that idea and applied it to the screen, and it feels really nice to actually be able to see my media displayed edge to edge. It's even nicer with the S24 Ultra's super anti-reflective coating that brings out the insane quality of the screen in pretty much every lighting situation. Seriously, the S24 Ultra has a brightness of up to 2600 nits, a tiny pinhole for the barely noticeable camera, and a fingerprint reader built right into the screen, which is something Apple's never given me the privilege of trying, and I like it a lot. The display is noticeably better and bolder than an iPhone one, and the feel and weight of the titanium, which they very obviously also copied from Apple, makes it feel like a genuine luxury item, which the S24 Ultra absolutely is. All that being said, a fancy screen isn't enough to make me abandon my AirPods and Apple Watch. I get there's alternatives to those things, but I'm too deeply rooted in the ecosystem to be heavily inconvenienced with the transitioning process. What happens to this gorgeous screen when I put on a screen protector that I will absolutely buy from Five Below? Instant devaluation. This year, Samsung got rid of the S23's 10x camera and replaced it with a new 5x version. That seems like a downgrade, but the 10x was only 10 megapixels, while the 5x is 50 megapixels, meaning you're getting more detail performing a digital 10x zoom because it actually renders out the image more than before. You of course still have a 100x zoom to mess around with and never take any substantial photos with, but it's still cool that it's there. I sound like I'm being snarky, and I am, but I also really appreciate stuff like that in Samsung devices. They're not afraid to implement weird stuff like moon zoom or change their camera specs in a confusing way on paper. But you know how pictures on apps like Instagram and Snapchat always look way better when they come from an iPhone? And you can almost always tell when an Android posted them instead? It's a serious problem that's legitimately kept people held hostage by Apple, and Samsung finally has it figured out. Their new dynamic HDR implementation helps photos retain their quality better than ever before while being posted to social media. Samsung specifically worked with Instagram and Snapchat to make this happen, and personally, I'm genuinely relieved. This also means you can get even more mileage out of the 8K video recordings and weird AI camera nonsense that I'll get back to in a bit. And speaking of bits, I want to talk about the performance bits of this thing. Samsung's been super jazzed about their overhauled vapor chamber that's supposed to be incredibly effective at cooling. And honestly, it is. One of the biggest issues that I had with the Z Flip 5 was that only one half of the phone was used for heat dissipation. When your phone gets too hot while doing things like playing games, little Genshin, little COD, it'll start to throttle performance, and low FPS is never a good thing when you're owning noobs in COD Mobile, which I don't do. Also, your fingertips tend to get a little sweaty and sticky when there's too much heat going on, and it can be a real inconvenience while you're trying to drab your little touchers all over the screen. During everyday use, the Snapdragon 8 processor sure is Snapdragon-y, and by that I mean it just kind of feels like what I've come to expect from flagship devices. Apps open in a uniform manner, battery life is great, and this thing can hold its own under a heavy load. Just like your mom. Ha! It's also powerful enough to support ray tracing and Android gaming. That the ones that actually support it. But it's kind of a bummer because it's not obvious which ones do. The Snapdragon 8 does complement the 5,000 milliamp hour battery, and I know from experience that you could squeeze 2 days of power out of this bad boy easily if you forget to charge it at night. I was consistently doing this, not just because I'm forgetful, but also because I usually use a MagSafe charger for my iPhone. While the S24 Ultra supports 25-watt wireless charging, it doesn't have MagSafe. So I have one of those little charging stands that has a pad that holds up your phone, a pad for my Apple Watch, and an extra wireless charger on the bottom of the thing that I use for my AirPods. I was using that last charger for the S24 Ultra, but it had to be placed out in a really specific way because the camera placement wouldn't let it work properly. It would somehow never stay put without me knocking it around throughout the night, and I just couldn't get it to consistently charge while I was sleeping. And while I'm complaining about the camera placement, why haven't we evolved as a human race enough to properly fit a camera lens on the back of a phone without it sticking out this far? This thing would be so much more fun to use the S Pen with if it could sit flat on a surface. But what we have evolved to experience is AI implementation in smartphones though. Samsung and Google are acting like their new super AI sauce will change mobile devices forever, and honestly, it might, to an extent. Some of the most straightforward AI nonsense on the 24 Ultra has to do with the camera. Yes, it all comes back to the camera. They've added features like being able to artificially slow down 30 FPS video from your gallery, remaster your images at the touch of a button, which is just a fancier version of something Apple's already done for years. You can blur the background of images that weren't taken in portrait mode, remove shadows and reflections, erase and move objects, and ruin your self-esteem with this jawline slider. There's a whole little section dedicated to AI tuning your face that includes this aforementioned jawline slider, along with smoothness, tone, and eye adjusters. You can also use this Fix Blemishes pencil that works kind of like the heal tool in Photoshop, but here it's mainly intended for pimples and whatnot. I did immediately find a way to abuse this power like an old Sims character customization screen. It seems like you're only meant to adjust the jawline and eye sliders to a certain amount, but if you tap on the blemish fixer, back over to either of these settings, they reset, but maintain what you've already done. And then you can just keep doing that over and over and over until you turn your selfie into a horrifying shell of what it once was. My iPhone can't do that, so this is a huge plus to me. Also, if you AI generate anything, this little watermark pops up in the corner of your image to denote that it was AI enhanced. But you can just use the object eraser tool to get rid of it entirely, so it's pretty much just a suggestion. They also incorporated AI into the voice recording app, which makes it capable of transcribing your voice notes in up to 13 different languages, and it can even live translate speech to a decent degree of success, apparently. If you use the pre-installed Samsung internet browser, you can also summarize large walls of web text. And because I'm a child, I decided to test the entire script of the Bee Movie. I hit summarize, and this is what it told me. Yes, I'm rating the whole thing. Barry Benson, a young bee, questions the monotony of his predetermined career path in the hive. During a graduation ceremony, Barry learns that bees work their entire lives without a single day off. Barry becomes fascinated by the pollen jocks, who have the freedom to explore the outside world. Barry decides to leave the hive and experience life beyond the confines of his society. Along the way, he meets a human named Vanessa and learns about the importance of individuality and choice. It's missing a couple key details, like the freaking bee falling in love with a human woman, but other than that, did a decent job. What it also does a decent job at is the AI Wallpaper Generator, which is this weird feature hidden in the AI settings that lets you make your own device wallpapers based on these pre-made prompts that you can customize. It's kind of convenient, kind of gimmicky, but definitely ensures you're always using a wallpaper that's one of a kind. We've seen Samsung innovate like this a bit in recent years with their customizable colored wallpapers that let you choose the color and abstract shape, but nothing this wacky. And while Apple doesn't offer any other sort of alternative to this, at the same time, you could just ask any other AI image generator to make you the same thing, and even then you wouldn't end up with the Samsung watermark on the lower left corner of your screen. But again, you just take it off pretty easily. Just to clarify, I'm not advocating you do this, but you can. We also need to talk about the S Pen though, which is unexpectedly one of my favorite parts about the S24 Ultra. It seems like a huge gimmick at first, but I seriously really enjoy it. Maybe it's because I always wanted a Galaxy Note with one of these cool little things, but this is my first time using an S Pen, and they do a great job of making it feel natural. There's a little bit of resistance from the grippy tippy of the pen while it glides around on the phone screen, and the inputs from it are registered differently than your hands, so you can actually rest your palm on the screen while you're doing things. things like taking notes, which I actually did a lot on this thing, partially because I was researching for the video and I was using the phone for it, but it was seriously really convenient. And there are even little features in the Notes app that'll transcribe your handwriting or even align it so it's easier to read. And the S Pen itself just adds an extra layer of precision to using a smartphone that you usually only get with a mouse on a computer. You can also click it, just for funsies.
You like jazz?
The S Pen's button also has varying levels of customizability. You can use it as a little button for selfie cams. It's fun. And it's also great for the circle to search Google feature that's included on the S24 Ultra, which makes Google image searching super easy. If you want to do that, you just hold the home button or the bottom of the gesture bar at the bottom of the screen until everything turns all glittery, and then you just circle whatever's on your screen with either the S Pen or your little fingies. Other than the fact that Samsung doesn't explicitly tell you how to do this while you're setting up your device, this is literally the best implementation of image searching I've ever seen. I use the image search feature a lot on Google, but there have been a decent amount of times that I've just decided to not do it on my iPhone because I don't want to go through the steps of screenshotting, navigating to the Google app, and uploading the photo. This process is streamlined, easy to use, and it really works. And finally, I want to talk about Bixby. Going into reviewing the S24 Ultra, I assumed Bixby was going to be a more significant component of the new AI features, but it's really not all that different from Siri still. It's listed as an AI feature in the phone settings, and you can use AI to create custom voices, but the one I made with my voice isn't amazing, and the whole feature set of Bixby in 2024 is kind of underwhelming.
Hey Bixby, tell me a joke.
Hockey goalies are so responsible. The puck stops with them.
I was hoping it'd be more like ChatGPT mixed with Siri, but it seems like the same old Bixby as things currently stand. The S24 Ultra is absolutely a powerhouse, and with the guaranteed 7 years of updates Samsung's promising, depending on what you're looking for, the $1,300 price tag is actually kind of justified. If you're coming from Apple's ecosystem, keep in mind that while Samsung and Apple are slowly kind of morphing into the same thing with different operating systems, there's still some discrepancies. The S24 has no MagSafe implemented in the device, although you can get Key 2 or MagSafe cases that kind of bridge that gap. There's no dynamic island, which could be a positive or a negative depending on who you are, but it also has an undeniably better screen, better 5x camera, fancy AI features, and familiar implementations of things like your gesture bar, lock screen widgets, overall design, and even the Photos app. I transferred all my nonsense over from my iPhone, and Samsung actually kept all my folders and facial recognition stuff. You can even search for stuff in your pictures using keywords like cat for consistent results. If you're willing to spend $1,200 on a new iPhone 15 Pro Max, you're likely willing to forego another $100 for a different new phone too. Whether you should get the S24 Ultra depends on whether you want to make the annoying cross between ecosystems or not. If you do that though, the S24 Ultra does more, looks better, and feels familiar enough to make the journey worth your while. Maybe, I don't know.